I'm Carrie Schroeder. I'm here with Dr. Amir Zeldes. We are the two founders of the Coptic Scriptorium project. There are many other people who work on the project as well, some of whom are here today. And the workshop is going to focus primarily on using our database of annotated Coptic texts and how to search and query that database. I'm going to start just by showing you very briefly some of the other features we have, just to give you an overview. It's a very diverse audience today, and so some of you may be very familiar with the project, others of you maybe are not. So just very briefly before I turn things over to Amir, I wanted to just share an overview of the project. So this is our main website, and from here you can access almost everything related to the project. You can see this first link on the left of browsing corpora. I'll take you there in just a second. That is where you can read texts. Today we'll be focusing on searching, but we also have an application where you can read documents. The dictionary is probably our most popular feature, and it's not really ours. It's a joint effort with German partners, especially at the Academy in Berlin. And they've created the lexicon, and we have created an interface online to access the lexicon. And then we also have tools that will analyze Coptic text. You're welcome to check that out later. And our focus today is going to be on the ANNIS database and how to do both simple and complex searches across the digital text and all the annotations we have of texts. So quickly before we do that, I just want to show for folks who don't know, this is not going to be the focus, but I just want to spend a couple minutes on this application that allows you to read texts. And you can see the menu on this interface has the home, which is this page you're seeing now, and links to authors, manuscript names, people, places, and then corpus, which is kind of the different groups of texts that we have online. And so, for example, you can click on any of these things in the quick start to start reading something. So, for example, Beza's letters and his letter to Aphthonia, for example. And you can click on it, you can see the transcription of the manuscript. You can also read it as kind of a normalized text that is similar, not identical, but similar to what you might see in a print edition. And in this interface, if you click on words, it will take you to the dictionary entry for that word. And there are pop-ups of an English translation if they exist. So if you just want to read, you're welcome to explore this interface, which you can click on here by browsing corpora. But today we're going to focus on search and querying here in the ANNIS database. Before I turn things over to Amir, I'll just mention I will be monitoring the chat. So feel free to put questions and comments in the chat. We will have time for questions and answers at the end. We're scheduling this to go for about an hour, so Q&A will be before that hour is up. And I just appreciate you all being here. So I'm going to stop sharing, and I will hand things over to Amir.
Yeah, thank you very much, Carrie, and thank you all for coming today. So as Carrie was saying, we'll focus today on how to do complex searches. Carrie already showed you how you can read entire Coptic texts, but sometimes you want to know details about how a certain Coptic word is used, or get frequencies for how often it's attested, or compare how it's being used in different texts. And that close reading interface really just lets you read the entire document or the entire work and is less suited to that. So let me share my screen. And if you start from the same website that Carrie showed earlier, I hope this is coming through all right. The reading interface is over here under Corpora. The dictionary that many of you already know is accessible here. This is the NLP service where you can use automated tools to, for example, suggest how a Coptic word might be segmented. And today we'll focus on this ANIS database, which is how we search for complicated word occurrences. And there's actually a video tutorial for this that you can see here, or you can proceed directly to the interface over here. But today I'd like to focus on the tutorial and cheat sheet over here at this link. And this is a good starting point because it also offers you some notes. So in a way, you don't need to take notes now if you don't want to. This cheat sheet will let you get started pretty easily. So if you click on that link, this is where you'll end up. It has an introductory part that talks a little bit about what this interface is like, and again, the link to this interface. But the part that's easiest to get started with is actually the cheat sheet. And this cheat sheet just has a lot of examples that you can click on. For example, how to search for a word, how to search for a lemma, how to search for Greek words. And then there are a couple of sections to this for searching for single words or 2 words or 3 words, how to use metadata and so on. So if you click on any of these links, it will actually run that query for you. And you can use that as a starting point by modifying these queries and then finding the things that you're interested in. So let's get started. The first query that you'll see here says norm equals and then te in Coptic. This is a standard form, a normalized form. And if you click on it, it will take you to this interface. So this is our ANIS database. And it's a pretty complicated interface. So let me say a couple of words about the different areas of this interface. Here at the top left, you see the query. This is the search term, what you're looking for. In this case, norm equals te. At the bottom, you'll see a bunch of different works you can search through. For example, if you're interested in looking at, I don't know, they have sort of short names here. This is Schroeder Fox. This is a work that many of you might know. It's Archimandrite Schroeder is not because a fox barks. If you want more details about it, you can also click this info button and we'll tell you more. For example, the full title of the work or how many documents it has. This comes from a manuscript XH204. It's got a lot of different properties here, not because a fox barks. It'll give you information about where the actual manuscript is. It will tell you that it was written in the White Monastery. It will tell you, what is the edition. If you want to read a print edition of this, there's one by Emile Chassina and so on. Okay, so this is how you select the work. When you run one of these cheat sheet queries, it's going to start by searching in the Coptic tree bank. You might wonder what the Coptic tree bank is. This is basically a carefully curated data set that's meant to be sort of a sampler plate of a lot of different Coptic genres. It has Bible writings, it has hagiography, it has martyrologies, it has epistles, it has homilies. So it's quite convenient if you want to get an overview for how a Coptic word is being used. And so we'll use this for this tutorial, but you can apply these queries to anything you want. You can also search in multiple data sets by kind of control clicking or shift clicking and just deciding what you want to select. But the Coptic tree bank is this collection of 82 documents, about 60,000 words. And then you can use that to find, so in this case, examples of he. Examples of te. This is te he.
Amir,
so, yeah.
Can I just jump in real quick and add that the tree bank is probably the most carefully edited group of texts, right? So if you want really carefully edited documents, that's the one.
That's right. It's been the most carefully checked. So the likelihood of errors here is very, very low. All of the data has been manually analyzed. Whereas if you look at some of the larger data sets, for example, we have the entire New Testament over here. Sahidic NT is the New Testament in Sahidic Coptic. This entire thing is automatically analyzed. It has tons of mistakes. That's not to say that mistakes are common, but for example, let me give you a basic idea. The segmentation tool that we use to segment Coptic words automatically is 98% accurate. That might sound really good, but that means that every 50th bound group is segmented incorrectly, right? So there's a mistake about every 50, large Coptic words, bound groups. So yeah, the tree bank is very good because it's very carefully checked. It's our most carefully checked data set. Okay, moving back to the interface, here you see the results. So if I click search, I get these results, and it tells me that there are 87 matches for the normalized form te. They appear in 31 documents inside of this data set of 82 documents. And here on the right, you see these results, and they're all in sort of standard Coptic orthography where things are spelled together, right? Like in te he or ete unu and so on, right? Ejin te sinte. So this is sort of a complex word. If you don't like this and you're used to reading Coptic in a more segmented way, you can actually change that here under base text and switch from norm group to norm. If you do that, the words will become more separated. Some people find this convenient to read because now you can say ejin te sente and see this te really easily. But some people are really not used to seeing Coptic like this, so they prefer changing to this norm group. It's really your choice. All right, so you can sort of see this here. And if you want to see more information about this verse, for example, its translation or other grammatical information, you can expand this annotation view over here. And then it will tell you a lot of things about this. For example, here's the translation. But if anyone builds on the foundation with gold, silver, costly stone, woods, hay, or stubble, so this is 1 Corinthians 3:12, and it will tell you a lot of different things about this. For example, the presence of Greek words or parts of speech and so on, all right? So let me go back to the tutorial. Norm equals te, that's the standard form. Sometimes things are spelled differently. So for those of you who are interested in the manuscript tradition of Coptic, you can actually see how things were spelled in the manuscript. Te is sometimes written with 2 epsilons, and the annotation orig corresponds to the original text in the manuscript. So normalized te could correspond to original sort of te. Let me click on that, and then you'll now see that the search changes to be this. There are only 7 of these in the tree bank, and you'll see that right now it looks as though it's just saying in te mine, right? If you change the base text from norm group to orig group, you will see how things were spelled in the manuscript. And now you'll notice that actually it was spelled in te mine. All right, so this helps you to see how things were actually spelled. And you can also compare things a little bit. So we have a diplomatic text and a normalized text. And if you want to read the document like that, that pretty much corresponds to this interface that Carrie showed here, where we had, what was the example here? Besa's letter. This is the manuscript form, but we also have a normalized form, right? Where things are spelled the way you'd expect them in an edition. So that's the same distinction over here, and you can search for both of them. So going back to the cheat sheet, you can also look at lemmas. So lemmas correspond to dictionary entries. And in this case, te is the feminine form of the demonstrative article. So this is something like, if, I don't know, in standard Arabic, this is something like hadihi. And the lemma form would be, the standard form is to take the masculine singular. So you'd find it in the dictionary under pay. So pay over here, if I search for that, lemma equals pay, you'll notice you get a lot more results now. You get 221. And this contains both masculine cases like pei ion over here. Again, I can separate them out if that makes it easier to read. Ta pei ion, pei ion, and so on, but sometimes also feminine. So here's the te sinte. And at some point, you'll also see some plurals with ne, right? So that's the lemma. And it's sort of your choice. The interface offers you all of these, and you can actually see how they're annotated by expanding the annotations again. And you'll see that, pay is the lemma of pay. So here, lemma, normalized form, and original form, they're all the same in this case. And the link also takes you to the Coptic dictionary. So if you click on this, that's funny, there is actually no entry for pay because it's not really a content word. The function words are not all attested in the dictionary. But for example, I don't know, a content word like archon is maybe a better example. So that exists, and you have all the different spellings of it and information about its meaning. So these links will always take you to a dictionary search for those words, whether or not those words are attested. Okay, if there are any questions, please use the chat and I can try to answer those. There'll also be dedicated time at the end for questions. I want to move on to show you some pattern matches. So if you're interested, for example, in Greek words in Coptic, you might just want to find all Greek words, or you might want to work by a certain pattern. So this is an example searching for forms ending in os, so os. And again, if you just use the link to this tutorial, which I'll remind you is on our website right here under tutorial and cheat sheet, You can always find these queries and run them. So now I'm going to search for words that end in os, and some of them are actually names, so Paulos, but also apostolos, Christos, Corinthos. There are quite a lot of words ending in os. And by the way, you'll notice all of these are from First Corinthians. That's because the results are in alphabetical order. And First Corinthians, the name of the data set starts with 1 core. So it gets alphabetized first. If this is sort of repetitive for you and you want more diversity, you can go to the search options tab over here, where the corpora list is, switch to search options and change to order random. And if you do this, you'll get a much more diverse set of results. So now you get topos, Nymphios, Diogmos, Christos, Petros, Pirasmos, and so on. So a lot of different words in os. And when there are more than 10, well, you can decide if you want more results than 10. You can also have 25 results per page. And you can leaf through them over here, page by page, right? So Eichmalotos, and so on. And most of these are indeed Greek. Probably some of them are not Greek. Do I have an example of that? And these are all really all Greek. Okay, entos. So this is just the pronoun she in Coptic, and it's not Greek, of course. So what this shows you is that you're only just searching for words that end in os. I'd like to point out that searches for patterns like this have slashes around them. So if you look at the query that I had for pay, that had straight double quotes around it, right? That means you want to find exactly that. Whereas this pattern match has slashes around it. That means that we're not literally searching for dot star. This is just a wildcard symbol for saying anything followed by OS. And if you want to know more details about the wildcard language, you can check out the tutorial that explains this in more detail. But in any case, if you're using pattern matches, you need to make sure you're using slashes. All right, let me move back to the tutorial page. So we saw that some of the words in os actually don't correspond to Greek terms. If you wanted foreign items, so loan words, we actually have an annotation for that called lang for the language. If you just search for lang, it will give you anything that is a loan word. That's the same as doing lang equals slash dot star slash, like anything, language equals anything. Coptic words don't have this annotation, so this only applies if it's a loan word. Or you can also say, no, I specifically want the Greek ones. So you write Greek over here. And now it doesn't matter if they end in os or not. And even if they end in os, if they're not Greek, they're not going to be included. So we've got Paulos, Christos, Sostenes. A lot of these are names. Again, I'm going to randomize this so I get a more interesting sample. Helen, Diakoni, Parage, Soma, Diogmos, right? So all of these are indeed Greek words. Some of them are particles, gar, right? You can get all of these. So there are quite a lot of Greek words, but I don't know how many of you know this, but there are also, of course, say Latin words in Coptic, quite a lot less, but there are quite a few. So comes is a title, right? It's a type of administrative community leader. Some of them are names as well. So this is Diocletianos, Emperor Diocletian. But other ones as well. Ordinon is a Latin word. Fragelion, Palation, right? So Palation is palace. These are actually Latin words and not Greek words in Coptic, and you can search for that in this way. So that's the language. Next, I'd like to show you how to combine different annotations. Maybe first I should introduce the part of speech annotation. So there are different parts of speech in Coptic, and we have a system for tagging them, which you can see at the bottom of the tutorial. So there are different part of speech tags here. There are verbs, for example, and there are subtypes of these tags. So for example, a verb can be a regular verb, v, or it can be a stative verb, right? The qualitative form, v stat. So this is something like, if quote is to build, then the stative is kate, right? So we can search for these. If you're interested in stative verbs, because you're doing a linguistic study of Coptic, you can click on that. And again, the search looks very similar. Pos equals v stat. And now you see those neo, seh, so not high, but seh. Wa'ab is actually the stative of whoop, neo, and so on. And if you expand the annotation grid, you will actually see these parts of speech. So here's the stative, neo, nifneo un. And you'll notice that this is considered the stative by suppletion of this other verb, e, which is go. So this is how to search for parts of speech. And now I want to show you how to combine the two. So if you want to search for two annotations, then you sort of need to say how they combine. So here I'm looking for a verb, which is also Greek. And I'm doing this by placing this symbol here, which is _O_. And that symbol means that these two annotations overlap. So they occupy some of the same space in the text. So this is a verb which overlaps Greek. And this will give you Greek words, which are also verbs. So for example, onomadze, right, to give a name is a Greek verb. And this targets both the Greek annotation and the verb. You'll notice the system gives a different color to each thing you're searching for. Part of speech is in red and the language is in purple. And then when you expand your search result, you'll notice that it puts, the annotation that matched the red thing over here and the purple thing over here. Right? And then you can see that it's onomadze, and then you can look, what other forms does it have in the dictionary? You can see it has different spellings and so on. And the dictionary actually has a lot of examples of these things which link back to our data sets. So you can search for that. If you're ever on the dictionary and you see this more examples button, actually what it does is it opens another ANIS window and searches in all of these data sets for onomadze. All right, moving down this list, other interesting things to note. First of all, if you're looking for two alternative values, you can use this vertical pipe between them. You'd need to study our part of speech chart to understand what parts of speech these are. These are actually the converters, the circumstantial and focalizing converter. Some of you might know this as the second tenses, so second present, second past, and so on. And you can search for those and it will find you either or. So efjo, erip ro, so with erip, it's hard to know whether it's the second present or the circumstantial present. But actually, our data sets disambiguate this. So this is supposed to be the focalizing or second present. CFOC stands for the second present. Whereas this one is not the second present. This is the circumstantial, and you'll see that it's tagged like this. Okay, so another thing to note is subword morphemes. Some Coptic units are smaller than words. For example, the prefix mint, or in Bohairic met, is smaller than a word. So when you look for a normalized word form, something like mint-ro, so kingdom, or met-uro in Bohairic, would be a whole word. And this component mint would just be part of a word. And you can find these as well. So this is all words in mint in the Coptic tree bank. Mint refjiua, or mint monachos, so monkliness or being a monk, the profession of being a monk. And you notice that it's composed of two morphemes, mint and monachos, which together make up the lemma mint monachos. So somebody in the chat is asking whether there is a way to look for Semitic words, and there is. I will point out that the way that we do language etymology is by the oldest possible language. So if you look for language equals Hebrew, you will get a lot of biblical names. So for example, Isaac is considered to be a Hebrew word. Some users might consider this to be a Greek word because it comes from the Greek Bible, but we always go as far back as possible. So Elijah and Isaac are considered Hebrew words. Sometimes, though, you will get, Semitic loan words that are Hebrew that are not proper names. So, for example, I don't know, chatul, the Coptic word for cat, is actually a Semitic loan word. Hamen, of course, is a Hebrew word. There are a few Aramaic ones that's more rare. Aramaic. So this is Talitha of Talitha Kumi, right? Her name is Talitha, means third born in Aramaic. So indeed, that's an Aramaic name. Some place names, Bethsaida is an Aramaic place name. Alphaios is an Aramaic name. So yes, we do have these. And sometimes we have really foreign words. So when Jesus says Talitha Kumi, actually that word is it's considered to be in Aramaic. It's not actually hard to distinguish from Hebrew and Arabic, because that word, it means get up in Hebrew and Arabic as well, but it's presumably meant to be Aramaic in that scene. I hope that answers the question. You can also search for entire bound groups. So groups of Coptic words spelled together, like Empechristos would be norm group equals Empechristos. And we also have a rig group for searching for original manuscript spellings. So orig group and norm group, these correspond to these things over here. You can see that in a orig group, you'll sometimes see that things were spelled in all caps, or have supralinear strokes, or have nomina sacra spelled like impx, right, which is Christos. And if you expand it, you will get it back to sort of a normalized spelling. Okay, that's all I have to say about single word searches. I'll show you briefly how to search for pairs of words. So this is just for your convenience, 2, 3. Of course, you can also search for 4 or 5 words, but this is just a demonstration. So I showed you earlier how you can look for part of speech and the language using this O operator, which means that they overlap. You can also look for two things that are one after the other, meaning they don't overlap. The most basic way is to do dot. So this is norm equals in key, dot norm equals t. So here you get feminine words after an key, and the dot just means one after the other immediately. And key tamr, right? Bohairik, so I see there's a question about Bohairik. I didn't want to get into this too much, but yes, so we just started releasing some first Bohairik datasets. Currently, we have a lot less for Bohairik, sadly, but we are expanding it steadily. So right now, what you have here is Bohairik, First Corinthians, and Mark. We can select both of them. Of course, if I look for Nchi, I won't find anything, but I can look for the Bohairik equivalent in J, and you will find Bohairik. So Nehof, Naton, Hawi, Harof, and Jacobos, Nem Johannes, Psheri, and Zebeda. So this is all, as you can see from this form here, Bohairik. And you can search for these, and we are working to expand our Bohairik datasets. You can also use the interface that Carrie showed to read Bohairik's text. So if you change to corpora over here, this is the Bohairik Gospel of Mark, and you can just read it. And it's annotated in the same way. So the part of speech tagging system and everything else applies exactly the same way, except that instead of awo, it says woh, and the rest is as you would expect it. Yeah, I'm not sure how many of the audience are more proficient in Bohairik or Sahidic. I'm just sort of using Sahidic as the default example, but depending on the data set, you can search for both.
And I'll just add a plug for the St. Shenouda conference that's coming up Friday and Saturday. The St. Shenouda Society, run by Hani Takla, who is well known to many people on this chat, on this seminar. That conference is this Friday and Saturday, and we will be giving a paper specifically on Bohairik at that conference. And if you go to the St. Shenouda Society website, the conference information is there.
Yeah, thanks, Carrie. Yeah, we're looking forward to being able to present this work. And as I was saying, we're trying to expand our Bohairik resources. So please look forward to that, or if you want to get involved, let us know. So you can also look for sequences of other annotations. Here's 2 Greek words consecutively, for example. So it's just lang equals Greek, dot lang equals Greek. And you've got parakali followed by de, or baptidze followed by, so a lot of them are going to be some content word and then a particle, but also preposition. So katasarx is a good example, preposition and Greek noun, katasarx. Now, if you want to have things at a certain distance from each other, you can also do that. So dot means immediately next to each other. Dot 1, 3 means within 3 words. So this means intok followed by pe. So most common example is intokpe, it is you. Intokpe pashere. But you sometimes have things between them. Intok on pentak jos. So you are also the one who said something. And then it's separated by on, but this is allowed because I said 1, 3, meaning between 1 and 3 words between them. If you just want to say someplace later, you can do dot star. Notice this is not within slashes. This is also a wildcard search where the K is optional. So here, let me make this a bit simpler. This is literally in talk, and then at any point later, pe. In talk, dot star, lemma pe. So I guess you also get te and other things that are totally irrelevant, that are not part of this construction in tokpe, which is why it might make more sense to limit the distance like this, or maybe within 5 words. If you also want to find the feminine form, you can do what I had here initially, which is put a question mark on the K. This means with or without the K. So this is a wildcard search, so it's in slashes. And it means either in talk or in talk without the K. So the question mark means that the K is optional. So this will also find in tote. I don't know how common that is, but in to, this one actually I don't see any examples of, so that's a little bit disappointing, but you might have been able to find in tote in this way. Another operator that's sort of similar is the caret operator. This is what you get on a keyboard if you press Shift-6, so this little hat over here. This means in any order. So this is a wo within 5 words of on, no matter which one of them comes first. All right. Usually it's a wo then on, but here's on followed by a wo. And you can also do sequences of parts of speech. So this is a noun followed by a clitic pronoun. So again, you need to know the tag set. N is noun, and pepero means pronoun, personal, object form. That's what that stands for. So this means the subject pronoun, and this means an object-like pronoun. And this gives you things like het, or hnaf, or nork, all these different rat. So, I mean, of course, this means to stand, but literally his foot is rat. So this is like a possessed noun. And you can find it this way because the dot means one after the other, and the 2 other annotations mean noun followed by this thing. All right, I won't spend too much time on 3-word searches. It's largely the same. This is just to show you that you can expand this. This is afsotem. This is uebolhin, which is sort of a cool construction. Uebolhin pgenos, right? He is one of the descendants or of the family of so-and-so. Sort of an interesting construction. And you can find that using a 3-word search. I do want to briefly show syntactic, metadata, and miscellaneous searches. Yes, it is possible to search in the translations. I guess if that by popular demand, we can start with that. That's in the miscellaneous searches. The translation annotation is called translation. And you can use it in 2 ways. One way to use it is simply to use it to delimit the sentence. Because the translations are sentence by sentence, you can use them to find things at the beginning of the sentence. So I'll give an example using some paleographic searches. If you're interested in ecthetic letters, so these big, nice capitals that are like pulled to the side of the margin, we use the annotation high rend equals ecthetic. This stands for highlighted, rendering ecthetic. So ecthetic are these big, nice capitals. And you can sort of see in Coptic manuscripts, they're sometimes actually not the first word of a sentence. Sometimes it's the second word. And then it has a line of its own and is sort of indented to the left or has a big letter. Afbok in weish, right? So this is an apophthegm. If you want to see how that was laid out, you can actually look at this diplomatic text here and see how it was laid out. We're talking about this N here. Afbok in weish. And you can sort of see in the annotations that this N is ecthetic. And it's also spelled with this big N here. And let's say that you're interested in finding out when these things are sentence initial. So in this case, it's not at the beginning of the sentence, it's in the middle of the sentence. So one way to use the translations is simply as a proxy for the sentence. If you use this operator, which is _L_, it means that something is left aligned. Left aligned in this context means that something begins with the ecthetic, because if they're both on the left side, then at the left of the translation, you have ecthetic. So this is a case like that. You have etbe, and indeed the etbe is ecthetic. It has a big, nice E. We can sort of look at that here, and it's also the beginning of a sentence. Now, another way to use the translations is simply to use them to search the text. Now, if you're interested in, I don't know, say a sentence containing bird, you can do ** bird **. Keep in mind that it's possible that this will be the middle of a word containing bird. So this type of search is not really sensitive to word boundaries. You could put spaces around it, but keep in mind there might not be a space. Maybe there's like a period or something. So this might be the safest way to search. And then you will find, and it happened as he sowed some seeds fell by the road. This is the Gospel of Mark, chapter 4. And the birds came and devoured it. So it finds that translation. And this is the most basic way of searching inside translations. So you can just use this pattern match. And indeed, you'll find verses about birds. Yeah, here, there are actually birds here. So these are both positive examples.
Amir,
Yeah.
can I add just something on translation?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that translation annotation that's just called translation that Amir just showed is always going to be the English translation, and we're a little like Anglo-centric, and we call the English translation just plain translation. We do have a few Arabic translations for the Apothegmata, Patrum, the Sayings of the Desert Fathers, that Philippe Zaher has done. They are not so easily searched. I would not
Oh,
try
you
to search
can.
them. You can, but
If you want to know everything that has Arabic, you can simply search for Arabic.
yeah.
There's not a lot of it, as you can see right now, and those are the sentences that currently have Arabic translations. And you'll notice they're very faithful to the original, even if they're fragments. So he's saying, I desire to save my soul. So قائلا أريد خلاص نفسي. So you can see here that this sentence does have an Arabic translation, but not all of them do. Typically, if a work has Arabic translation, then all of it will be translated. But we'd like to expand this, of course.
Great. And there's a question in the chat about your search that showed, search for these words within 3 or 5 words of each other. The question in the chat is, does that cross sentence boundaries?
Yeah, if you don't do anything to limit it, it will cross sentence boundaries. It's actually more complicated to limit it to a single sentence. It's possible, but then you need to specify a complicated relation between the translation. So let's say, remember this overlap?
The chat doesn't want sentences within sentences, wants it to cross sentences. Yeah.
If you want it to cross, you don't need to do anything special. By default, the search will cross sentence boundaries. It doesn't care about the sentence boundaries. If you say the word de before the word on within 50 words, it'll just go on for 50 words. It does respect work boundaries. It won't overflow into the next work. The results will always come from a single work. But sentences don't matter for that kind of search. Okay, so this is a few words about these miscellaneous searches here. I want to be mindful of the time. I want to show you a little bit how to search in metadata. So let's say you want Latin words, but you only want them inside of the manuscript coming from the White Monastery, which all have this Monasterio Bianco prefix, so MONB. You can do that. Let me, where was I here? So this is Latin, and it searches for metadata. All of the metadata always begins with meta : and then MS name stands for manuscript name. And again, we have a pattern search for anything starting with MONB. And you can do this to restrict your searches to certain metadata categories. For example, who the annotator is, or who did the translation. So this is data sets translated by Budge. If you're interested in how Budge uses the word Lord in translations, well, you're in luck, you can check. Of course, you might not want to limit yourself to the Coptic tree bank. You can just look at anything edited by Budge. But these are all sentences whose translation contains Lord and were translated by Budge's translation. Another sort of interesting thing if you're doing quantitative data searches is to use the annotation redundant. So usually we want to do, if you search for enih, you will find all occurrences of enih. That's not surprising. But some works have multiple manuscripts of the same text. And in that case, you'll sort of get duplicates, right? Because you'll get the same word from the same section of the text just because there are 2 manuscripts of that text. If you want to rule out that option, you can do a redundant equals no. If you do redundant equals no, it will not find any duplicate data set. It will always rely on the primary manuscript for each work. If you do redundant yes, it will do the opposite. It will look for only things that are secondary witnesses to a work. So that's sort of interesting in terms of finding duplicates. Lastly, I wanted to show that.
Just real quick, can I add something about metadata?
Yeah.
So because this database is for searching kind of words and annotations, you can't really use it to get a list of all of the documents that are in, say, that are, MONB documents, right? You have to always use the metadata search with something, right? With a word or something like that if you do it in ANIS. There might be other ways that we can get like a list of documents in a different application, but at least in Annis, you need to be searching inside the text for something and then using the metadata as a way to restrict your search parameters. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Strictly speaking, this is not true. There is a way to do what you're talking about, but it is indeed rather complex, and most people don't know how to do it. So,
well, I don't know how to do it, but so we don't have to do it. But it's
yeah, there is a
it
way to get a list
might
of
be like
documents.
a triple advanced seminar we can
It is
do.
it is a rather advanced way of doing that. So if you want to get a list of documents containing something, it's actually possible. I don't know if I have time to show quantitative searches. It's sort of there's a teaser about it over here at the bottom, how to do frequencies. And then if you look for something that's guaranteed to be in all documents, you can get a list of the documents. So there's a way of doing it.
Yeah. You can get, yeah.
It's a little bit involved. Let me sort of show another type of annotation that I totally glossed over so far, which is syntactic annotations. For example, if you want to know what words can serve as the subject of a certain verb or sort of find specific grammatical constructions, there is an annotation called func, which gives the grammatical function. For example, relative clauses. Sorry, my Anna's disconnected here. Relative clauses. So, papostolos et taham, or tai et shop in Corinthos, that's the ecclesia. So all these things with the relative et, these are all relative clauses, and you can find them using the annotation func equals ACL relco. So this is adjunct clause, relative clause. Again, for the list of labels, you need to look at the cheat sheet. There is a full list of function labels, which you can consult. But you'll notice from looking at the other labels that there are quite a few of them. There's subject, so this is the nominal subject, this is the object, and so on. An apposition, so you can find appositions if you like. And this works like any other annotation. Paulos apostolos is Paul the apostle. That's what we call an apposition in syntax. And you can also look for words that are connected by a syntactic relation, even if they're not next to each other. One example is dislocation. Dislocation has two main forms in Coptic. One is using in chi. If you don't say apromesotem, but you say afsotem in chi prome, so you're realizing the subject sort of outside of the verb. There's also another form of this where you say prome afsotem, and this query will find both of those. And you'll notice it doesn't matter how far they are or in what order they are. It's just finding you words that are referring back to the subject of the verb. For example, un helende eushine ensa usofia, right? Or anonde enta shwesh, right? And some of them are within T, of course, in the opposite order. You can also specify the order to find only one of these orders. So in this case, it's a more advanced query. It's the same beginning saying there's a verb and the function dislocated. This part says they're connected by a syntactic link. They're dependents of each other. And this part says that the second thing will be followed by the first thing, where the second thing is this and the first thing is the verb. If you want to see where these annotations come from, there's a syntax view over here, which displays a dependency syntax graph of the sentence. And here you can sort of see what's a subject of what, what's the object of what. So you can see that Shine takes several participants, the Helen and the Sophia that they search for. And you can do quite complicated syntactic queries on top of this. You can also get frequencies if you're interested in sort of what are typical objects or subjects of a verb. And there are a lot more kind of advanced examples in the tutorial if you read on. For frequencies, I will show where this is in the interface because it might be a little bit hard to find. And this is mainly interesting if you have questions like, what is the most common Greek word used in Coptic? So you can use this query, which is Greek as well as, hang on, I've got too many windows open. Greek as well as lemma. Where was I? Here we go. So this is lang equals Greek, and this operator means covering the exact same space. So they are the same word. Lang Greek and lemma. So in the tree bank, there are quite a lot of these. There are almost 4,000 cases, but you can get a frequency list by going on more, frequency analysis, and then pressing perform frequency analysis. This interface can do a lot of things, but I don't have time to go into it. I recommend reading the cheat sheet in more detail. There's some information about that. Well, it will surprise no one that the answer is De is the most common with 584 occurrences, followed by God, Allah. And in this data set, the first content word is Christos. In terms of function words, you see things like kata, ude, then pneuma, cosmos. So you can use these kind of frequency lists to find out what's the most frequent type of annotation. We also have a lot of aggregate annotation views that you can get outside of this interface that are sort of pre-processed. If you're interested in learning more about quantitative data, take a look also at our tools section. There are things here like visualizations of all entities mentioned in the Coptic texts. You can look at, I don't know, all place names, all person names, or unnamed ones. So there are 18,000 mentions of places in our data. And the most common type is phrases headed by ma, then kah, then a, then polis. And if you look, kind of drill in, you can see the different variants. Polis, upolis, nekpolis, and some rather rare ones. And polis and Judaya appears 3 times, for example. Anyway, this is outside of Anis. So yeah, I want to be mindful of the time and make sure we have time to answer questions. So I'm going to end here and open the floor to questions. Feel free to just unmute yourselves or write in the chat. If there's something you'd like to know how to search for or to understand better, or just anything you're curious about the project. Ancient Egyptian origin of words. I mean, basically anything that doesn't have the foreign language annotation is a native Coptic word, so it sort of is ancient Egyptian. If you're interested in knowing which ancient Egyptian word corresponds to which Coptic word, that's something that the Thesaurus Linguae Aegyptiae can help you with, the TLA. So the ID system of the Coptic dictionary is actually aligned to TLA. And maybe Daniel, if I see Daniel Verning is here, so maybe you can say a few words about the correspondence between Coptic lexical items and ancient Egyptian ones.
Yes, hello. Yeah, sadly I can just say that this is on our desk to be done in the very near future. So but there's some data already in the Demotic database project. They have linked their Demotic lemmata to the Coptic dictionary, and we took their data and look at them right now and expand them, but yet the TLA does not provide the information. Yes.
Yeah, it would be great to have that, but sort of Coptic Scriptorium scope is strictly within Coptic, so we would be very interested to support and link to this, but we don't produce ancient Egyptian lexicographic resources ourselves. Now, Bishoy is asking whether there is a word analysis for sentences. So there's 2 parts to this. One of them is the searching, and one of them is sentences that you might want to analyze. For any search results that you see, let me share my browser again. In here, you can always expand the annotations and see everything, right? So yeah, there are the lemmas, there are the normalized forms. You can also export this stuff using this export function. So these are really the things that are already in the data set. But if you are dealing with a new Coptic text, I sort of wanted to give a plug to something Carrie mentioned very briefly under the tools, or you can also get to it from the home if you get to NLT service here. You can use this tool to analyze Coptic text and get a dynamic analysis of the most probable analysis of text you enter. I can enter whatever I want here. So something like this. And then you can select different types of analysis. If you are in this mode, it's just going to put, we call these pipes, these vertical lines to separate everything. But you can also do more complicated things. So here you see that it suggests to segment it like this, in case you didn't know. So this is actually a very simple case. Of course, it's quite easy. Keep in mind that if you want to do Bohairic, you should select Bohairic. If the text is somewhat long, then the auto language recognition will kick in, and probably the Bohairic text will be recognized, and it will try to do Bohairic analysis. I should say that the quality of Bahairic analysis is substantially lower right now, just because we have so much more data for Sahidic. If you start crossing these other options with more complicated analyses, you can get things like syntactic analysis or entity recognition, which we also have in our data sets. And those will appear at the bottom here. So it appears both as an XML format, which you can use if you're like a coder and you enjoy this kind of analysis. So here you'll see that it recognized that sotem is a verb and that its lemma is sotem and so on. And also the grammatical function, if it will understand that this is the subject. But it will also have some graphical analyses. So it understands that prome is a person, as you can see from this sort of box here with a little human icon. And it also understands the syntax tree for this. It understands that this is the subject pronoun. It understands that this is a dislocated subject, that this is a determiner article, that this is a past auxiliary. So yeah, you can also get dynamic analyses for any sentence, even if it's not something from our data sets. A lot of people are asking for the recording. Yes, we will put this on the recording. So Bishor is asking, will it show definitions? You mean dictionary definitions? So to get to the dictionary, it's always a link because we want to make sure that you have the most up-to-date dictionary. In terms of common nouns like apostolos or tohum, which is the lemma of Tahm, you click here and you get to the dictionary and then it does a search. Now this doesn't disambiguate a definition. So if tohum has two definitions, it offers you both. And it's not sure whether it's a summon or a convocation. So you can click and read more about those. There's also a link to Crumb's dictionary and more examples of that word over here. So this is from the Coptic Old Testament Manuscript Room project, which has a digitized scanned Crumb's dictionary over here. The other definition sort of thing that we have is for named entities. So we do have linking to Wikipedia. For example, this is Paul the Apostle. So if you click on him, you will actually get to the article about Paul the Apostle. And this is true for any named entity that has a Wikipedia article. I don't know if there's a more exotic one here. You can actually search for proper nouns like this. POS for part of speech, and then nprop. So those, of course, don't have dictionary definitions because let me randomize. Because, you know, Paul is not a dictionary entry in the Coptic dictionary. So in this case, so Apasarapayon doesn't have, I guess, Wikipedia entry, but Galilea does and Nazareth does. So all of these things are sort of linked. And you can actually also use these to search for text. So if you go on our Corpus browser, this people and places sort of search, you can find all of the texts that mention a certain named place. So if you're interested in, say, Alexandria, here are all of the works that mention Alexandria, like the Apophthegmata Patrum, the Life of Apu, the Martyrdom of Victor the General. And so you can sort of see where Alexandria is mentioned, and it's linked to the entry for Alexandria in Wikipedia. And the same is true of people. Mache is asking about the speed of the Coptic dictionary. Yeah, it's not really the Coptic dictionary itself so much as the server that is running it. And yeah, we've been talking about getting a stronger server. Unfortunately, we're on a budget in the project. So it's really just a question of money. We would like to get a sort of beefier server that runs faster. So yes, hopefully. I don't know if Carrie wants to say more about that, but yeah, it's sort of in the works.
Yeah, we're working on that. Also, Daniel has in the chat a link to the project linking Demotic to Coptic lemata. And then before we go, I wanted to show one more thing in the metadata. Oh, the Coptic pipeline. Yeah.
Oh, this is very nice.
So this is the Demotic Coptic. There's a question from Peter in the chat about analyzing longer text. The pipeline on GitHub is old. That's probably what you want to use is on our tools page. Can you just quickly show how to get back to that again?
So, well, this does have a 10,000 character limitation, and it is up to date. So the models here are a bit more up to date than what you see on GitHub, but that's a valid comment on our GitHub models. They should be updated. So Bahairic, for example, is not on GitHub at all. and some of the models there are somewhat dated. So I appreciate the feedback. We should update the GitHub release of Coptic NLP. In the meantime, if you want to use the latest models are always available on this web interface. However, they are limited to 10,000 characters, so you would need to cut up your text to shorter spans. If you have like a one-off project that you want help with, you can also contact us. But if you need to do things frequently, then yeah, this is the interface that's sort of guaranteed to be up to date. But yeah, I appreciate the comment, and we will try to release an update to the Coptic NLP pipeline, I suppose this summer, probably.
Yeah. Before we go, we just had a couple questions in the registration about metadata and finding information about documents. And so I just wanted to show, very quickly where metadata is again, and the kinds, and go look at a couple bits of metadata. So this is, a document. And this is all the information about the document in our interface to read, because somebody who registered asked about how to find manuscript images. We do not publish images of the manuscripts. That's just more complicated than, we have the labor to do. It's possible, but it's, yes. So really, we always put the repository where a manuscript is so that you can, of course, contact them. This particular manuscript, the image is not online. If the image is online, for example, the French system, Gallica has a lot of the Coptic manuscripts online. If they are online, there will be a link somewhere in the metadata. And you can find, again, that metadata here also in ANIS. Each document, right, is going to have the metadata, the exact same metadata, right, with the repository. There's also, I just want to point out, we also tell you how much editing has gone into a document rather than just running the natural language processing tools. So for example, if you want to look at word segmentation, this document in particular has only been segmented using the automatic tools, the segmentation automatic. Some of these, like all the ones in the tree bank, are going to be gold segmentation, gold tagging, and that means they've been very heavily edited. So I don't know, is that visible in these, for example?
Yeah, it should be
Yeah,
visible.
yeah.
So,
So see gold entities, gold segmentation, gold tagging. Sorry, this might be a little small on your screens, but so you can also tell how much editing a document has had by looking at the metadata. And then the last thing, I think the only other question that came up in registration that we have not answered is the question about are there opportunities to work on the project? And we do right now have volunteer opportunities. We don't have any paid positions open, but if you would like to, volunteer to check some of the annotations, for example, check all the part of speech tags on a document to make sure the tools have done it correctly and help improve our tools. That's the kind of thing that we welcome volunteers. I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time finding like all my little Zoom operations here. There we go. Or if you have a document you're particularly working on and would like to edit, like you're, an expert on, a particular hagiography, reach out to us and we'd be happy to work with you about on that. So just, email me. I sent you the registration info. So thank you. All right, we are at 12:02. So I think it's time to let people go. I will be posting this video on YouTube, and I will send a link to all the registrants to that video. publicize it on social media. So thank you so much for coming.
Thanks, everyone.